This isn't our usual tender. Hello.
Hello.
Nice little gifts. Despite of having to pay a tax.
Oh, I might as well get in the back where I can see what's going on.
I'll be up to you anyways.
Well, there seems to be plenty of room here. And even an upper deck. Might as well head there. So that we can see the harbor as we go. Is this a forest preserve or something? Wow. Well, honey, the clouds have parted. It's a sunny day. It really looks beautiful out here. Well, several others are standing up the tender to take pictures of this, and it's kind of a hard one to miss. So here we are on our way into Sydney Harbor. The Opera House really looks different from this angle, doesn't it? And let's not forget the coat hanger, or I should say the Sydney Harbor Bridge. Quite the view. And we're going right underneath them. Oh, and there's more. I think this is Luna Park that we're passing by now. I don't really have that much to add, but it's basically like Navy Pier ramped up to 11, I suppose.
Admittedly, we wouldn't get to visit it, but it was kind of cool to actually see it there and all.
And of course, let's not forget the CBD, the Central Business District, right behind us. We should be landing shortly. I'm just realizing that up at the top of the harbor bridge, there are people walking that curve. That is the pedestrian walkway. Honestly, from here, that looks terrifying. Meanwhile, there's a train going by on the bottom section. So here we are, huh? At Dawes Point, right at the foot of the bridge. And as you can see, the Opera House behind us. We've got a few minutes before the bus gets here, so I figured I'd let you know where we're starting. Apparently the buses run every 25 minutes or 35 minutes if we're talking the blue ones, but those will take you to Bondi Beach, and I'm not exactly dressed for that. Not that I'm likely to be doing any surfing or anything like that. Still, there's a lot to be seen, and let's go see it. As soon as the bus gets here, any time now. Now there's something you don't see every day in a big city. Guys going out to go fishing. Ah, here it comes now. Oh, there's room for us. It looks like there's plenty of people on here already. Yeah, hopefully it'll be a right time. For what it's worth, we didn't manage to make it onto that first bus, but at least a second one came by within about 5 or 6 minutes. So we're about ready to head out. See how this goes.
I'm not gonna lie, honey. There were a lot of things to see as we drove along. But for the most part, I really couldn't follow along with the narration because it was plugged into my ear, into earbuds. And of course, that didn't get caught on the camera. Meanwhile, we're just looking around, pointing our cameras wherever the narration told us to. And while that worked really well, when we're swapping back and forth between the bridge and the Opera House, I couldn't tell you most of the other things that we passed, and in fact, I didn't really film much of them.
Wow, I'd talk to you, but I don't think you'd hear me at this point. The bus tour is pretty comprehensive, even though it barely gets past the city center. Or rather, it does a circuit around what would be considered the city of Sydney as opposed to Greater Sydney. There's still a lot to see here, and at this point, I think I'm going to try and make it on foot to Woolloomooloo, which we already passed through, if nothing else, to get one of their famous meat pies around there. I have a vague idea where I've gotten off the bus. The circular quay is just that. This is where the ships and the ferries all dock. And eventually, once that Virgin Atlantic one pulls out, that's where the Serenade of the Seas is going to be. Obviously, I don't need to hurry back there because it's still occupied with somebody else. So I'm wandering about, hopefully getting myself over to Woolloomooloo at some point, if I can figure out how far I have to go in order to get there. It's all kind of hit or miss at this point. The map doesn't feel like it's drawn to scale, especially considering how long it took to get around by bus. Imagine how long it's going to take on foot. But at least I'm not going to try and go to the outer lengths of the route. So we're going to see where this takes us, and maybe I'll make a few comments along the way. There's certainly a lot to see, even if it's just the mundane and typical, or at least the mundane and typical to these folks. For me, it's like, okay, it's all brand new, it's all strange, it's all weird, even if the basic gist of walking about in a city is fairly common to every city you walk in. There's always something a little unusual, a little strange. And for that matter, I probably should try and stop at an ATM. The next 4 stops are going to be in Australia. I might just actually benefit from having a few Aussie dollars on me. But that can wait. And leave it to serendipity, leave it to chance. If I find one, great. If I don't, I'm not gonna break my head trying to find it. I'm gonna say it's distracting to just look around. As much as I'm trying to get from one place to another, there's always something to see, even if it's just things I've already seen, like the Harbor Bridge and the ship behind us. It's still wild to look around and see where you are. Such as this. I found a stairwell at the side of the quay in between 2 very tall buildings. Climbed it, probably for about what felt like 2.5, 3 stories, and wound up on Macquarie Street. Now, if this doesn't look like Macquarie Street or any street whatsoever, well, you probably can hear the cars behind me. I'm not that far. Just because I'm in a park right now doesn't mean there isn't a street behind me. They're still in the middle of downtown. And in fact, it's not too far a walk before I get to one of the more iconic spots in all of Sydney. From this angle, it's hardly recognizable as the Opera House we think of. At the same time, it's clear that it is a grandiose building for a grandiose purpose. And from this angle, you can see that it's not one building, but rather multiple ones, with, I understand, hundreds of rooms underneath, practice rooms as well as actual stages for performances and the like. It's not all one vast space for performances, which is surprising to me, and yet I suppose shouldn't have come as much from one, given its odd shape and design. You think of it as all one integral whole, and yet it really isn't. But from down here on the Man of War steps, which we were supposed to have been transported to this morning, I guess, things didn't work out that way. You can see more of the lotus flower shape that the Opera House was meant to resemble. It's still weird to realize that the original mock-up by the Danish designer was a bunch of orange peels thrown together in order to illustrate the shape of it all. But once it's all together, it is in fact one of the modern wonders of the world. And with that being said, I can't honestly think of a better place to send some more of your ashes to rest. And right here, off the dock, in the shadow of the Opera House, where you can finally sing to your heart's content. Although I suppose you're singing to him now, for all I know. It is hard to manage this, seeing as how the Quay is just rocking here. But here goes. I don't think you're actually getting into the water here. Let's try a different angle. All right, one more time. Welcome to Sydney, honey. There. Another resting spot. And a beautiful view. I wonder if someday, when the trumpet calls and the little bits of you coalesce again, do you see where you've been taken? Does it occur to you? Will it occur to you where you are? Will you be able to appreciate the places you've been left? I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to take any credit or anything like that, obviously. But I just wonder if you get a chance to look around, see, oh, another place. There'll be plenty more as we go along, I'm sure, honey, but welcome to Sydney. Welcome to Australia. Rest well. And may many songs guide you to that rest.